These are new metal releases for November 15th, 2024. It was kind of a strange weekend. There are a lot of different types of albums, and a lot of them were weird. Others were not that good. So it's going to be a mixed episode. I have 7 albums to talk about. Some of them are big names. Others are more obscure and underground. I want to start with As I Lay Dying, Through Storms Ahead. Before we get into the current state of this band, let's take a quick look at what's going on with them. So as of November 11th, 2024, the band is effectively defunct. The only remaining member is Tim Lambesis. All the other members, including bassist and clean vocalist Ryan Neff, the tour manager Alex Kendricks, both guitarists Ken Susi and Phil Segroso, as well as the drummer Nick Pierce, they have all left the band. What's interesting is that even though Tim Lambesis has said he wants to rebuild the band with new members, we don't really know why everyone left. Some people think it might have something to do with Tim Lambesis. That's probably the most obvious reason. Phil Segroso made a statement. He hinted at some internal issues holding the band back and a desire for a, quote, like healthier environment. And this suggested potential problems within the group dynamic. But despite these problems, Tim Lambesis seems set on continuing under the As I Lay Dying name. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can rebuild the band and recapture this popularity like without all these original members. We'll just have to wait and see. As for the new album, it's not that impressive. The album starts with a short instrumental, which is not too bad, but it was only a minute long. The first main track was called A Broken Reflection, and I thought it had a sound that was similar to what I remember from their own albums. The song had a clean and harsh vocals with an old school metalcore sound. After this was the song Burden, which also had some hard-hitting guitar riffs, but I also felt it had a sound that was similar to the previous song. Then after this was the big single called We Are the Dead, which had Alex the Terrible and Tom Barber, which was a decent song, but also had a sound similar to the first 2 tracks, although it might be the best of the 3 tracks I just mentioned. And I didn't really like the clean vocals. That's kind of the biggest problem with this album. It's the type of album where it's like it wasn't that great. I think a lot of the songs had a similar formula with that heavy metalcore riffs combined with the clean and harsh vocals. I think if you're a fan of 2000s metalcore, you might like it better than I did, but I liked it a little more on my second listen, but I don't think there's anything here that you can hear done better. Like, I would rather go listen to an old Killswitch Engage album than listen to this or listen to some of their older stuff. So I thought I was going to give this a really low score, but it went up maybe a point. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It's formulaic 2000s metalcore. If you're a fan of that genre, maybe add another point. So check it out. Before we continue, let me show you some vinyl I just picked up, and then we'll move on. I got Van Halen's Fair Warning, Styx Paradise Theater, Rat Reach for the Sky, Kiss Dynasty, and Judas Priest Sin After Sin. So that's it. Back to the video. Next I have Poppy with Negative Spaces. So if you don't know, she started as a YouTuber and then became a musician. She has changed her style over the years, but often been associated with metal music, as her albums have featured a wide variety of styles. This album comes about a year after her album Zig, which was released on October 27, 2023. She hinted at a part 2 of the album, which would be called Zag, but I don't think this one, Negative Spaces, is a sequel to Zig, but if you think I'm wrong, you can let me know. As for Negative Spaces, it's much heavier than Zig. Negative Spaces has a sound that can be described as metalcore, industrial, pop metal, and arena rock, but there are also elements of synth pop and hyperpop. Negative Spaces was produced by Jordan Fish, who was the former keyboardist and produced Bring Me the Horizon, but in comparison, Zig was produced by Payama and sounded more like industrial pop and electronica, so this is a different type of album. It's also a darker album and explores personal themes. She released a single called New Way Out, and according to Poppy, it's about the process of pulling yourself out of the brink of despair. The song mixes pop and metal, and she was inspired by both Madonna and Britney Spears on this track. The song also had a heavy industrial sound. As for the rest of the album, the opening track is called Have You Had Enough? And this one is a heavy industrial pop song with Poppy singing in both her pop and heavier vocals. The track also has some heavy metalcore style guitar riffs. Then there was The Cost of Giving Up, which had a combination of that electronica sound mixed with some heavy riffs, which is just like the previous track, but I felt this one had more of a radio-friendly sound. But But there was enough heavy guitar for the metal fan. If you're looking for something heavy, then I would suggest the third track, They're All Around Us. And this features some of Poppy's intense screaming and faster drums, and includes riffs that reminded me more of deathcore, but also had some of the clean pop vocals as well. As for the rest of the album, there were some standout tracks. There's like a lot of tracks. There's Crystallized, sounds like 80s pop. Vitals sounded more electronica. Push Go sounded like Madonna's Ray of Light. And then Nothing sounded like a mix of 2000 metalcore and pop music. And then there was the title track, Negative Spaces, which reminded me a lot of Hole's Celebrity Skin. But there was all heavy like music mixed into all this like pop and electronica. But overall, a much better album than Zig. A lot of variety on it, and there's a nice blend of the heavy stuff and the poppier stuff. So my score is going to be 8 out of 10. I will be going back to the album. It might be a grower. It might go up another half a point by the end of the month. I have 5 more albums to talk about. The next few reviews will probably be shorter. Those were the first 2 major releases. Next is called Star Chaser, and the album is Into the Great Unknown. This is a Swedish heavy metal band. They're fairly new on the scene. It's their second album. They're on the Frontiers Records label. The band has 5 members, and the album features some big arena rock vocals, powerful drumming, a thick bass guitar sound, some traditional heavy metal guitar riffs, and some keyboards to round out the sound. The album has 12 tracks. All the songs are science fiction themed. I'm not sure if it's a concept album. I believe it could be. The album opener is a straightforward arena rocker with lots of melody. Battalion of Heroes had some heavier chugging guitar riffs and some angrier sounding vocals, but still very melodic. One by One had more heavier riffs, lots of energy, but on the contrast, Shooting Star had more of a futuristic sound with more of those keyboards in the forefront. Then there was the song The Nightmare King, and this one had this creepy music box melody in the intro. I like that part of it, but overall not too bad. It was melodic heavy metal, bordering on power metal and arena rock. It was a decent album. My score is 7.5 out of 10. I think if you like melodic heavy metal and arena rock, you can get into this album. Next is Full of Hell and Andrew Nolan with Scraping the Divine. So Full of Hell is a grindcore band from Pennsylvania. This is their second album they released this year. They released Coagulated Bliss earlier this year. This band likes to do lots of collaborations and splits. So this is a collaboration with Andrew Nolan. He's a musician. I don't really know much about him. I couldn't really find a lot about him online. But it's a very weird album. It's filled with lots of screams and strange industrial drum beats. One of those albums you have to be in the mood for. It's not the type of album that has songs with typical song structures. There are 12 tracks. It's 35 minutes long. Songs are about 2 or 3 minutes each, and they all have lots of different sounds and screams. For example, the track Heat Death from The Pyre, it's a mix of black metal and death metal with some horror movie synth. Burdened by Solar Mass has strange futuristic sounds mixed with grindcore screams and drum beats. Track number 7, Facing the Divine, has someone called GXCX, and it was pretty cool. Had a very claustrophobic feel and some interesting drum beats and strange sounds. But for me, the album was kind of different to get through. Despite the short run time, I think you have to be in a certain state of mind or mood to understand what's going on. But I may be wrong. Maybe it gets better with repeat listens. I don't really see myself going back to it often, so I'm going to give this 6.5 out of 10, just if you're looking for something very weird and avant-garde. Next is Voodoo Circle with Hail to the King. This is a German hard rock band, and their influences are Whitesnake, Yngwie Malmsteen, Deep Purple, and Rainbow, and that's exactly what the band sounds like. The band is also called Alex Bayroth's Voodoo Circle. They formed in 2008. Alex Bayroth is the guitarist, and he also played with Primal Fear, although I don't think he's no longer in the band. Voodoo Circle also used to have Matt Sinner, but I believe he recently left as well. So you can see the band has ties to the band Primal Fear. The singer is named David Reedman, and he has a style that's similar to David Coverdale. As for the album, it's basically just arena rock with influences from the aforementioned bands. I didn't like the first half of the album, but I thought some of the songs in the second half were actually really good. So for example, I thought the album started to get good with track number 6 called Stand Your Ground, which has these cool John Lord style keyboards and slowly builds to the main song. There's a foot stomping rhythm, and the song also has a big and powerful chorus and makes the song very memorable. Then the next track is Black Country with some awesome bass guitar sound in the intro and some of those Middle Eastern sounding riffs. I like the song because it reminded me of a cross between the bands Whitesnake and Rainbow, and it had a sound that was similar to Led Zeppelin's Kashmir. Then after this was Billy's song. It was a slow rocker with some awesome drumming and keyboard sounds. Then it was Strangers in the Night, which had more of a heavier sound, sounded more like 80s Whitesnake. And then there was another Middle Eastern sounding track called The Sound of the Eagles, which was another pretty strong track on the second half of the album. They closed with a track Hail to the King, which had a cool Ritchie Blackmore rainbow style guitar. But overall, kind of a difficult album for me to score because it was very long. It was over an hour long. They could have trimmed a few songs. A lot of songs have runtimes that are longer than they need to be. Songs are between 5 and 7 minutes. They could have trimmed a little off the album, but tracks 7 through 12 were really good. And I thought tracks 1 through 6 were kind of okay. So I don't really know where to go with this. I'm going to go with 7.5 out of 10 just because the tracks at the end were really good, but otherwise I would have been completely bored with it if it was like everything like the front half. Next is the Foreshadowing with New Wave Order. This is an Italian Gothic Doom band, and their influences are My Dying Bride, Catatonia, and other similar bands. They've been active since 2005. This is their 5th album. I've never heard this album before, but I'm interested because I've been getting into Gothic music lately, and although there have been some pretty good releases this year, it was just okay for me. The opening track's called Vox Populi, and it had a mix of heavy guitars and some Gothic sounding keyboards and those low baritone style vocals that were common with Gothic bands or post-punk music. They followed it up with a track called Judas Had a Friend, which sounded more like some post-punk but with a slightly heavier sound. Then there was a track called Last December, which had a slower and creepier sound. I think they were going for more of a dark and depressing tone. And there was another track called Heraclitus. I like the song. It had a very dark and epic nature. Reminded me a lot of 80s post-punk with a slightly heavier sound. You can hear the distorted guitars in the background and keyboards and in the forefront. I don't really have much more to say about this. I thought it was a pretty decent album. It was similar to other that I've been listening to lately, like Tribulation and two others, and there were a lot more I can think of right now. But it was decent. I needed some more listens, but for now, it's going to be a 7 out of 10. It's the kind of album I need to spend more time with, but otherwise, pretty cool Gothic rock. The last band I have is called Thy Catafalque, and the album has a title I won't be able to pronounce, so I'm just going to put the text on the screen, and I'm going to put the text on the screen for all the song titles because I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce it. They are an avant-garde metal band / black metal band. They're from Hungary, and the album was recorded and everything is in the Hungarian language. The album's very strange, but at the same time it's actually pretty good because there's a lot going on, but they make it interesting and they make it work. It's basically a one-man band, but when he goes live, he has a bunch of musicians join him, and it's hard to describe. The album has tons of other people. There are male and female vocals and a bunch of like different stuff going on. I was surprised to see they have a pretty large career as well. The first album came out in 1999, and this is their 12th full-length album. I'm going to talk about a few of the songs, and I'm just going to say the track number. So track number 1 sounds like typical hard rock song, but also has some heavy death metal style guitar riffs in the middle of the song and some popular piano parts as well as female vocals. Track number 2 is the dark and gothic sound with elements of power metal with rapid fire drum beats, but also has some deep guttural vocals with elements of black metal. And a standout track is track number 5. Sounded like Arabic pop music, but with some darker tones and cool guitar riffs. And then track number 6 sounded like some of that music you would hear in an old Bollywood movie. Track number 7 sounded like something you would hear in an old Italian spaghetti western, but with more of a synth pop sound. And there's a lot more going on. They're basically taking like almost any and every style of music you can think of and blending it all together, but they do it well. And I would have to give this album like a full review, and I'd probably like spend like 15 minutes talking about everything that's going on. But I'm keeping it short. It's an 8.5 out of 10. This is my highest score of the week, actually. And might even go up a half a point if I give it some more listens because it's pretty cool. There's like so much going on. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's all. Check out last week's episode, new metal releases for November 8th. Next week, there are 3 big releases with Opeth, Marilyn Manson, and Body Count. So I might just do standalone reviews and not do episode of this new metal releases with short reviews. I'll see what happens, but I'll probably do another episode the week after, and then that will be it for the year. But in the meantime, please give the video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm and all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one.